In terms of video games, the Turok series dates back to 1997. That first run of titles was a bit of a shooter mainstay, with consistent releases all the way up to Turok Evolution in 2002. This includes mainline console titles, a multiplayer spin-off, and more than a handful of side-scrolling Game Boy adventures. Since then, the release schedule has become far less consistent. It took 6 years for Turok to get a reboot in 2008, and if you ignore a certain chibi-style spin-off, Turok Origins is about 17 years removed from the last serious attempt. Wait, that can't be right. Anyway, what I'm getting at is it's tough out there for a Turok fan. And what's worse is, it wasn't supposed to be that way. There were plans for other games, but they fell through. So today, let's take a look at what we missed out on. Full disclosure, most of my information is from the Turok Wiki. It's an amazing resource and you should definitely check it out. First up is Turok for Gamecom. This is the only footage that exists, and it basically looks like a really low-quality remake of the first game. It's just a 4-second loop of Turok blasting a raptor with the assault rifle in a featureless void. There's also a single screenshot from a magazine, this time with a pair of staff-wielding natives. I guess what's more interesting here is the platform itself. The Gamecom was a handheld designed by Tiger Electronics in 1997. It was like a more robust version of their previous handheld systems, which were always built around a single game and had the computing power of a calculator. The Gamecom was a bit more ambitious and sort of resembled an early PDA. It even had a touchscreen and internet connectivity features. Obviously, I never had one of these, and I don't know anyone who did. Anyway, it's easy to look back at this and laugh, but if they did manage to pull it off, this would have been pretty swell. The portable version of Turok we did get, Battle of the Dinosaurs, is an okay little platformer, but fails to truly replicate the experience of the console game. This seems like it would have been significantly closer. Even going off what little we have, the sprites, I'd say, are pretty detailed, so, it's reasonably impressive. And hey, wouldn't you know it, this wasn't the last failed attempt to get Turok Dinosaur Hunter to work on the go. There's also a cancelled Game Boy Advance port. This one you can actually play on an emulator, although there's not a lot to it. Apparently this was in development before the release of Turok Evolution and scrapped in favor of the side-scrolling title we eventually got. And hey, I love that game, but why not both? I always love seeing little screenshots of games that were never finished. So to actually play this one is a little surreal. The build itself is super basic. There's no collision, so you can walk through trees and walls. And if you continue beyond the boundaries, you'll find yourself wandering through an endless valley of repeating ground textures. Visually, it's a very accurate replica of the N64 game. There's even the little altars that hold the level keys. Maybe the life force tokens look a little wonky, but I imagine these were placeholders. Granted, a part of me does wonder if this would have eventually become something other than a remake. Is it possible it might have been a sort of Turok Advance? For comparison, consider Mario Kart Super Circuit and how it tried to copy the visuals of Mario Kart 64 while remaining its own thing. Oh, and in case you're wondering, yes, there are enemies to shoot in the demo, but it's kinda strange. You can summon them with a press of a button. Turok freezes in place while a soldier slowly staggers from the mist. Of course, there's still a lot of work to do since they won't hurt you and they're just waiting to be shot. The first time this happened, it was actually a bit creepy. There's just something about this disproportionate humanoid figure shambling forward in silence. I don't know. So if you're curious, go play this one. It's very much a proof of concept, probably designed to look good in screenshots, but it's always fun to explore the path untraveled. Anyway, let's move on to the heavy hitters. First, there's Turok Resurrection. This was going to be the sequel to Turok Evolution. You heard me right, Acclaim was planning on continuing. Unfortunately, that little bankruptcy thing got in the way. Resurrection was intended to release in 2006 for the Xbox 360 and PS3. And while not much is known, there are a few details available. First is some concept art. Look, here's Turok, specifically Tall Set. In this piece, he looks very much like he did in Evolution. But in another, there's a lot more to pick apart. First is the creature, which is some kind of hoofed beast with a saddle and large cannon. Obviously, Turok would ride atop this thing, much like he did the Styracosaurus in Turok 2 and the Pteranodon in Evolution. Although, given how controversial the flight sections were in the latter example, I'm surprised they were so eager to continue down this path. It's also a bit strange that it's not a dinosaur, but I guess this thing being a mutant bison or bull does mesh pretty well with the Native American aspect of the Turok character. As for the man himself, he looks a little different here, sporting a cool skull-shaped shoulder piece and the WWE Championship belt. Also, I guess I am making an assumption that this is Turok and not a new character, but who else could it be? Moving along, you can see some sketches of Slag forces. I'm guessing the thin guy on the right can use that massive shoulder to protect himself. He's looking a lot like the jackals from Halo, if you ask me. Design-wise, it also seems to be maybe a bit more stylistically medieval or gladiatorial than the Slag scene in the previous game. And finally, there's the Cyber Ape. I mean, what's not to like? I can picture this thing hopping around like a Perlin. You know, something tanky that charges right at you. But hey, why speculate when there's an official pitch document to read through? Stephen Kick, the CEO of Night Dive Studios, released this on Twitter back in 2020. And let me tell you, Turok Resurrection sounds awesome. It begins by addressing the loose thread at the end of the last game. Turok has unfinished business with Tyrannus and sacrifices himself to defeat the menace once and for all. Of course, even in death, Turok can't take it easy. The Elders of the Afterlife resurrect him to defeat a new enemy called the Soulless. And to help Turok in his battle, the Elders grant him a variety of spirit powers. The document doesn't really elaborate on this too much, except for the fact that they can be used alongside traditional weapons. I'm picturing a bit of a Bioshock situation here. Or, you know, Turok Origins. Funny how that works, huh? Maybe it's a little more faithful to Acclaim's ideas than we thought. Anyway, I'm always skeptical of ideas that have the potential to dilute the importance of gunplay. But I think after such a legendary run of games, Acclaim would have earned the benefit of the doubt. The document also says Turok will ride armed dinosaurs. You know, like Dino Riders. Specifically mentioning a Triceratops and a T-Rex. Tobias Bruckner, eat your heart out. But it is strange that they don't mention the weird buffalo creature. Maybe that artwork came later and replaced the Triceratops. Or, hey, it could be the other way around and the artwork is older. Moving along, the document mentions reworked first-person controls, specifically highlighting melee weapons for dual wielding. So Turok's laying waste with a submachine gun in his right hand while swinging a tomahawk with his left. Or maybe this is where the spells come in. gunning enemies down and casting lightning like John Rambo meets Emperor Palpatine. And then there's some talk of the return of classic weapons, which isn't really surprising, but what is a little eyebrow-raising is the mention of warp levels from Turok Dinosaur Hunter. I mean, these areas were pretty fun to explore in that specific title, but I never really missed them in the sequels. Like, it does work thematically. It's just hard to picture a situation where they're important enough to list as a key feature in such a sparse document. Really, I could see them being more interesting if they were less random and more like secret stashes. Maybe even containing upgrades if the game's mechanics allowed for it. Really, the most exciting features for me are the last two. There seems to be an emphasis on environmental damage, which I think is something not a lot of developers invest in, but absolutely increases immersion. I mean, it's great to see crates explode and trees fall when you shoot them, but to have that level of detail in everything from bullet holes in walls to literal scorched earth just makes battles seem that much more intense. And the other feature I think is really awesome is the promise of 8-player death matches. It's very possible it would have been a ghost town within a couple weeks, but Turok's multiplayer has always fallen just short of taking off. Maybe the online aspect was the last push it needed to compete with the big boys. And hey, even if it wasn't a hit, I'd still have some fun. The arsenal in these games is just so awesome. Who doesn't want to cerebral bore their friends? So yeah, the documents for this one are available to read online. There's more there, this is just what stuck out to me. And hey, this game sounds like it could have been a real winner. It's a shame that its fate was determined by so many outside factors. Although to be fair, as much as I like how literal the title is, Tur Rock Resurrection, I'll admit it's a bit weird that it's a sequel to a prequel. I saw a comment about this on the wiki and totally agree. If this game actually released, it would retcon it so that Turok and Dinosaur Hunter has already been killed and brought back to life. It doesn't change too much, it's just weird to think about. The last game we're going to look at today is Turok 2. No, not that one. This is a sequel to the 2008 reboot, and unlike the other projects in this video, this one looks like it got pretty far into production. There's a lot more to look at here, and in a way it's actually pretty frustrating. My biggest issue with the 2008 reboot was that it felt so generic, and the sequel would have absolutely addressed this. I mean, just look at all of this environmental concept art. It's really impressive stuff. There's so much I can't possibly comment on all of it. Granted, it's difficult to determine how much of this would have actually made it into the final product. Based on what I read, there was a lot of focus on the whole desert environment. The overall setting would be the same terraformed planet as the last title, but in the time since Kane's defeat, things have changed, and all of the hostile forces left behind have become feral maniacs. It was basically Mad Max meets Turok. And hey, that sounds good to me. There's just so much material here, you have to wonder what state the game was in when they pulled the plug. There's a mood-setting teaser with Turok sharpening his knife by the fire, and a Triceratops head mounted on his wall. Kind of an announcement-type presentation. And then there's another one with actual action that seems much closer to something you'd release just before gameplay. It's basically a completed cutscene with a T-Rex wreaking havoc in some kind of desert outpost. And on YouTube, I found what appears to be an animation test using unfinished character models. Moving back to the wiki, there's character sketches and even mock-ups of potential menus. It's crazy! Despite the massive amount of leaked material, details remain a little vague. One key feature was the return of a cerebral bore-type weapon called the Jack. Except in this case, it would allow Turok to take control of dinosaurs. In this mocked-up menu, you can even see the option to change your dinosaur settings. This definitely seems like a neat idea. When I read this, I immediately thought back to playing as the raptor in first person in the early N64 games, but this one screenshot really makes it look like the player is controlling it in third. And maybe that makes the most sense. It's pretty easy to imagine Turok jacking a T-Rex and the camera pulling back to show the full scale of its massive sweeping attacks. Really, the shift into more outlandish elements is exactly what this reboot continuity needed. Just look at the human enemies in this concept art and their wildly varying designs. These guys are a far cry from the bargain bin generic mercenaries we fought in 2008, and the weaponry also seems like it was moving in the same direction. Here's Turok absolutely obliterating a T-Rex with some kind of massive laser gun. And the dinosaurs themselves, which look pretty great already, were also in the process of getting wilder and more feathery redesigns. I'm already softer on the 2008 game than most, but I think any Turok fan can appreciate just how much better this looks. It's a real shame it never happened. Anyway, that just about wraps things up for the Summer of Stone. For those keeping track, we've officially covered every Turok game, which was quite the undertaking. And hey, if you enjoy these videos, I hope you stay tuned. The plan is to continue to produce Turok content as new titles are announced and hopefully not cancelled. Thanks for watching.